So, first of all, thank you once again for joining me at Housing 2020. My name's Alex Impey and I'm the founder and head of property operations at XUSA. And I've got the pleasure today to speak to you about how we need to revolutionise social housing for the next generation, what that looks like, and how we as XUSA are trying to also tackle this problem. It's an interesting piece being at a virtual housing festival. I'm hoping you're all enjoying it. It's a new experience for myself, and you all have the privilege that you've got me for the fourth time in a shirt in the last 5 or 6 months, and I do have trousers on, but I will not be demonstrating that to you guys. But yeah, so thank you very much for joining me. Before I kick things off and talk a little bit around social housing and revolutionising this particular sector, I thought it was always good to kind of portray a picture and tell a little bit of a story about myself, and then hopefully that lays some context. And so you've got two little pictures of me here, one when I was young, one where I'm not so young now, and unfortunately I'll just say to my partner, I'm now outside of that 18 to 34-year-old bracket, as I just had a birthday, and I'm now in that second category of 35 beyond. And so I'm just getting to terms with that. This was me when I was 30 years ago when I was a 5-year-old. As you can see, my hairstyles haven't changed and my ears are just as big now and then when I was 5. But just a little bit about me. And I was born in Hartlepool, which is in the northeast of England, as many of you might be able to tell from my accent. And I was born in a single parent family, low income, no income. And that really defined, I think, a lot about who I am as a person and the opportunities and how I kind of progressed through. And this was really my first understanding of social housing, because obviously my mum was in originally what was called council housing, affordable housing, and good and bad elements to that. I remember our house nearly falling down from subsidence, which is a bad piece, but I also do remember a lot of good memories, stable education, and a location to live, which again, as I mentioned, really molded me. It gave me the platform to move into university, where I studied as a mechanical engineer, and I spent 12 years in industry working all over the world, delivering large infrastructure projects in some really interesting locations. And that then culminated me to coming back into the affordable sector in one way or another, which was through the Help to Buy schemes. And I actually tried with my partner at the time. We bought a place in London after a lot of saving, a lot of hard work in our own careers. And I remember moving in there and getting this ticky-tacky little box of 55, 60 square meters, not knowing who my neighbours were, not really having anywhere to hang out. Being in this gentrified location, which essentially meant, we had an affordable housing block at one side and a private housing block on the other, which caused a lot of tensions. There was people would label people in the affordable sector as, these pulling down our house prices, and the affordable sector was like, look at these privileged, FFFF. There's a lot of few nasty words there, but there was a lot of hatred or misrepresentation between both parties. And I remember thinking that why is this? This shouldn't be the case. Both have got some fantastic opportunities in living areas. So why is this here? Why do I have to spend so much cash to jump on a housing ladder? And then that got me really thinking about where affordable housing is and where we are in the country, in the UK, and how we could try and do something a little bit different. And that led to me developing XUSA back in 2018 and looking at a different mechanism of how we can tackle affordable housing within the UK. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of story. Now, where it started, as you can see, I've put on here a picture of probably what a lot of people have seen, I'm sure, in attendance, which is one of UK's very kind of atypical council housing estates. This particular one is called the Central Estate, an area which I grew up and know very well because in Hartlepool. And I've got a lot of fond memories, again, good and bad for this, but this was because my first ever girlfriend lived here. She lived in this house here, just there. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm giving you a breakdown of my love life, But Cheryl Carter was the name, a very fantastic lady, one of the most intelligent people I have ever met. And I think what the reason why I wanted to talk about this a little bit is, you know, that where this council housing was and the aspirations of the people in there. Now, I had a lot of friends, and I spent a lot of time delivering papers with Cheryl, eating fish and chips, but also a lot of time dodging, you know, a lot of trouble that was in those areas. And I had a lot of friends at the time, and you know, they would often have problems in there, not from home or domestically, but just from having to live in that and in quite an oppressive environment. This has got quite a reputation back in the 90s, and everybody's expectation or hope was to move away from this location. And I think that really set the tone, and it's a sad state that, you know, with a council estate, which was, you know, and council housing has delivered over 5.5 million different houses over the last 100 years and supported a lot of families get onto the housing system. But it's a sad state that, you know, my friends only ever aspired to leave, and that should never be the case. And that's where, you know, kind of started to say, right, well, how can we look at something different for the future generations, that they shouldn't have that expectation or desire to leave. So as the title states, you know, revolutionising the social housing for the next generation, that kind of infers that there's a problem. Now, we know that we've got a generic housing problem in the UK. And we need 345,000 houses every year. Interestingly enough, in the end of 2019, we only made 241,000. Although it's a good stride forward, but only 18% of that was social housing, or what could be considered as social housing, which means we're 90,000 homes off our target. And going back to this inferred problem, I'm an engineer, so I reverse engineer everything to say, right, okay, well, you know, this is where we want to be, having a really good, fantastic product for our future generations, and went back to what that problem is to come up with a solution. Now, and I get often picked on this, is, you know, well, affordable housing isn't just for younger generations, you know, such a big umbrella, and I definitely agree. And with XUSA, we specifically look to tackle the housing inequality or issues within a certain subset, which is 18 to 38-year-olds, which is the millennials to the Generation Z. For those who don't know the definitions, I'll pop them on there for you to know. But we definitely agree that there's there's a much wider demographic and different subsets under that social housing umbrella. And we don't look to dodge those issues, but we want to tackle one item at a time. We feel that obviously the future of the UK in terms of inspiration, work, economic and delivery will and very much rests with these two generations as it stands. And so providing a platform for them will then help create a more stable position as we move through in the future cycles and open up other opportunities as well. That is very much why we wanted to concentrate on this. When we broke down this revolution for social housing, it came back to two particular problems. And the first one here is a lack of diverse, high quality, affordable housing stock. And I think it's, you know, I was reading quite a few different articles about the decline of social housing and in general quality housing stock. And, you know, there's been a 20% decline in social lettings for under 20 years, under the age of 30 over the last 10 to 12 years, which is a real shame, you know, that the young people are moving away from that social housing subset. You know, we know that the average house price is now 8 times more than the typical income for a homeowner or an aspirational homeowner. And you know, millennials in general are looking at not just home ownership, but other ways to get on. And you know, home ownership isn't be all and end all. We have got a lot of population is looking at the rental side as well. And you know, the millennials and Generation Z have to spend between 25 and 35% of their income just to get onto that housing ladder, or to have housing available. So it shows you that there is really a problem in there, and that we really need to tackle that and create more housing to allow people, a younger generation, to get access to this. It's not just creating housing for housing's sake, it's got to be good quality. We'll address this later. The second problem is then what we boil down to is stigmatisation. And if anyone has looked at the government's green paper on the social housing side back in 2018, stigmatisation was really one of the big points which they were trying to tackle within the social housing sector. And what I put in here is that social stigmatisation really limits opportunities and reduces well-being. And what do I mean by that? Well, in that green paper, 24% or 25% of families in social housing feel looked down upon, feel marginalised. And over 90% of people in social housing and residents feel like they've been stereotyped by society and media. Now, that translates roughly to that if you live in social housing or in that sector, you're 1.5 times more likely to have mental health issues. And that reduces well-being, not just from mental, but from physical health as well. And when you stigmatise people, try to label or brand them, or society does, that automatically creates a reduced mindset and reduces the opportunities, or the perceived opportunities, that those residents have. And it's something I think that we generally need to tackle in there. And so when we were looking at how to sort of revolutionise this piece and make social housing better for the future generations, it was these two problems that we really wanted to attack. So let's go back to the first problem, and then let's look at the challenges that we face. And what we've tried to do at XUSA is boil it down into a number of steps and processes about how we can look at each of these problems. So the first one is increasing quality, affordable house supply. Now, I'm not saying that all of these need to be done, or that there isn't more. But what we looked at is to say, right, where will the future generations be, and what are the points that we need to bring into play to really tackle that? And the first one is provide true mixed tenures for all aspirations. And what do I mean by that? I think I mentioned it before. Remove home ownership as the be-all and end-all. I read a Knight Frank study recently that did a study on a group of 18 to 34-year-olds. 47% of that group said they were happy with long-term rental as an opportunity. 45% of those said yes, they would like home ownership. And to be honest, facts are really easy to use to confirm bias. And you can read also that up to 80% still have the desire for home ownership. But I think having true mixed tenure, as in allowing people to decide what they want, is really key. We know that a trend on the younger side, and I'm still roughly in there at age 35, but we do see a trend that it's moving away from the ownership side to a long-term leasing or rental for convenience. And so being able to provide co-living, rental and home ownership in different formats then allows or creates that great mix, and creates a supply that can then be utilized by people and offers the needs and requirements of the future generations. The next point is to increase support for SME developers model and certain housing models. Now, again, I'm going to put my hand up here because obviously XUSA is an SME, and we know the importance of having support here. I know that the government has released the £1 billion support from the Enable scheme, which is good to see, but we're still finding that there's a lot of problems and barriers for SMEs to get into public contracts and support public sector housing, which is obviously a big part of the affordable housing and future social housing supply. And the Federation of House Builders, or the Master House Builders, Federation of Master Builders, should I say, FMB, they did a study about this and found that only 5% of SMEs were being successful in winning public sector contracts for housing. And so I think it's really key that, we need different models. We need the government, we need public sector to really support SMEs get through these processes. I've had experience before in Aberdeen trying to do something similar, and the lengthy pre-qualification and tendering approach makes things sometimes unfeasible, or it'll become really difficult, especially for smaller teams which don't have those resources. So support for SMEs and creating new innovative models to allow those SMEs to then flourish in the affordable housing sector is really key. The next point is embracing technology. I think this is a no-brainer, and I think most people realise the need to look at the MMC, the modern methods of construction, smart homes, the integration of technology into construction, but also the maintenance side and operation. One of the keys on here is obviously house prices and also the cost of building. Now, MMC is, we're in and around the break-even point at the moment, and as the economies of scale move towards MMC and the house building prices come down, that will only help developers, because obviously in some parts of the UK right now, especially where I'm from, the cost to build is actually more than the cost of sales. And so we need that gap to be bridged, and technology will eventually do that. And more importantly, on the operation side, the use of smart homes, sensors, helping detect leaks, maintenance issues will also help improve that quality for residents in an ongoing environment, because that's obviously one of the large points of this is, quality housing isn't there. We have housing, but it's not at the quality level to live in. And so smart homes will help that. And future generations do want that enabled ability to get the Google Dots and Alexa doodads. As you can see, I'm a super technological guy, but they want to be embracing that, and they will be willing to support those and pay for those facilities. The next piece to increase this quality affordable housing supply is public and private partnerships. And I think you can probably see that this links in with the first three steps, where essentially, private sector has got a lot of commercial aspects that they can offer public sector. That they don't need to jump through all of the political red tape sometimes. But likewise, the public sector has a lot of ability to make certain developments viable, especially brownfield sites, where maybe they can unlock land values. They might have existing brownfield sites which they can redevelop, or it might be through innovative financing pieces, such as creating loans and leasebacks at the end of a particular development to help create that finance to unlock a scheme. We're a big believer of public-private partnerships and the need to work together in synergy. And I think, with the changes in planning, we should see a lot more of this moving forward. And I'm a big advocate of these two areas coming together to really support that delivery sector. And the final one is good, sustained government stimulus. I think we're all agreed there that the government still needs to support housing. As I mentioned before, there is a big gap in some areas of the UK between house prices and the cost to build. And so we do need money to support and build in these areas, but also to look right across the board. So not just looking at local authorities and local housing authorities, but also look at house builders, SMEs, but also the customers, which is ultimately the residents, and giving them the ability to get on, whether it's home ownership through shared equity or a help to buy scheme, or other forms such as within the rental package and obviously the universal credit and supporting on that side. So I think it's really important that these five pieces together can help drive that quality affordable housing supply. So the second challenge, which comes from the problem, is how do we remove that stigmatisation? How do we remove that such that younger people and the next generation want to be part of have social housing, be in affordable housing, but then allows them to get the opportunities and experience that will move them into the next levels of their own personal development. So the key is, we took this in 4 steps. First one is, I think, removing social barriers and changing the label. And I think the key here is the label piece. Now, if you said to me social housing, the first thing I think of is the picture that I put on, flashed on the screen right at the start of this presentation, which was the picture of the central estate. And that brings in good memories for me, but also some bad memories. And it's removing those bad memories, removing the thought of council housing. You know, I mentioned that in that green paper, 24% of families feel that they're looked down upon, that they're stigmatized. That's the piece that we need to move away from. Because if you label people with a certain brand or a certain label, then people will play after that. It's a human nature piece. People will then start acting like that. And I had friends and acquaintances at school which, you know, felt like they were labelled like that from within their own society and within the school boundaries, and often played to that. And it's such a shame. So we need to remove those barriers. We need to remove the gentrification, or this forced gentrification piece, putting one person here and one person there, making people feel like they're a second-class citizen. You know, I'm sure we've all seen it as well on housing, in housing developments where you have a mixed tenure community, where the people from where we've got affordable housing tenants having to go through their own door because they weren't allowed to come in through the main entrance from the private sector. That's a barrier that already puts in place a negative context around social or affordable housing. These are the barriers that need to be removed, bringing people together under one ban, under one community. The second one is a truly diverse tenure. Some see this as blind tenure, I call it mixed tenure. I'm sure you've all had a different experience in here, but bringing people, it's again following this first step, is bringing people together under one banner, but not just excluding those who want affordable rent, those who want shared ownership, those who want rent to buy, those who want home ownership, those that want to co-live, those that want to rent. And that's the key, is then offering the diverse tenure will allow people to, or blind tenure, where you do not impose the requirements. So you do not need to designate that this person is from social housing, this person is on affordable rent. Allow people to live together and work and coexist together under their own requirements, what will make them happy. And then you will get this truly mixed tenure nature. And then that stigmatization is naturally diffused as you bring that community together. Third one is education and opportunities. Now, I see this a lot more looking through and working with local housing authorities. I see a lot more on the education and support of residents now, not just from mental well-being, but other different programs. I think that's a real key, and it's something that we address in XUSA, is actually ongoing development of our residents. And that doesn't just stop with, you know, creating opportunities around health, mental health, you know, food nights, gardening, yoga days, but it also looks at how we can educate by bringing people from the community, from different businesses, to, you know, open up the opportunities that are in there. What opportunities to work is there? What opportunities to improve your health? What opportunities to improve your mental well-being is there? And that in itself then gets people motivated. It gets people thinking about what else is available there, and then start working as a team. And that education opportunities, again, is another way to diffuse any of that stigmatization that comes out, because you have a collective working together and looking at the betterment of what they can do and where they can go. I think the final one is around communities and resident governance. And this is something we've worked with a company called Conscious Co-Live, and we bring it into our own developments. But I see it also with housing associations such as SOHA, who operate down in London, and they really look at empowering their residents in the format of being able to support the particular committee meetings and decisions on the way that their housing is operated and run. And moving away from this top-down approach, which is much more autocratic, to a bottom-up and a system approach where you have interaction and the residents are moving and building their own community. When you build a community, you create something that's much greater than, you know, this the sum of the parts as such. So it's much stronger cohesion, and this resident governance is a really good way to bring people online towards a common goal, and that in itself just dissolves that stigmatisation. I think it's something that we need to be working more towards, and it's something that is from within XUSA we're trying to really encourage within our own residents. So we talk about, I'm just going to, let me just move this, oops a daisy. So we talk about this revolutionising of social housing system. We talked about the problems and the challenges that are faced in here. And I think one of the keys is, what I wanted to kind of portray at the moment is how we try to do that XUSA, and spend the next 5-10 minutes just talking about our particular model, and also how we're trying to tackle all of those challenges and how we're trying to bring that into that model. So, you know, our what we call as a massive transformative purpose, which I know is a pretty long mouthful, but MTP is essentially a vision. It's what brings us together at XUSA and brings all of our employees and residents together. And it's about making quality living both affordable and enjoyable for everyone. And that's really at the heart of what we do, and that's really at the heart of where affordable housing needs to be. And it's about that quality, it's about living experiences, and it's about bringing that together, you know, and allowing people to enjoy those experiences. So how do we do it, XUSA? Well, we've got 7 pillars, and what I hope you can see within these 7 pillars is all of these challenges and all of the steps which we talked about over the last couple of slides, how we've condensed that into our actual product model. As I mentioned, you know, I'll touch on each one of these in a little bit of detail, but living experiences is the key here. End-to-end bespoke living, having everything at your doorstep. What does that mean? Well, you know, having and where we look at it is holistically is we have living, we have working, we have recreation, and we have health. And those 4 areas are key to human contentment and improvement within the housing and then living sector. And so what we want to do is create those 4 areas within our developments that allow people to enjoy, that allow people to take the most out of everything. And I think post-COVID as well, we've seen the need to have these live and working aspects a lot more on your doorstep, and the fact that our working habits are changing, even more so important to see, you know, having those work-live elements combined together. So creating these really exceptional living experiences is real key to us. The next piece is urban living. Now, we look at semi-urban and urban, and that is to provide a double offering. You know, we are I think it's up by the end of 2030, 90% of people will be living in cities. Now, will be interesting to see where that moves or declines, but cities are still going to be a large part of our lives. And so having those urban and semi-urban areas is real key, to provide those opportunities for younger people as they move towards those city centres or urban centres to live and work. So real key to us is semi-urban and urban settings. Next piece is the mixed use of the heart, which is the mixed use and the mixed tenure. And so we create mixed use schemes which bring in commercial. As I've mentioned, we've got the living, the recreation, and the health, so your gyms, your bars, cafes, and your co-working spaces. And those then really create, one is a financial hub, but it creates that environment for those bespoke livings to happen. Mixed tenure, again, super important. We bring all of our residents under one roof. We don't commute, we don't put people off site, we don't try to do any of that. Bring everyone together under a wide range of tenures: co-living, private rented, social rented, home ownership, shared ownership, rent to buy, key worker. Bring that all together, and we make sure that people are working under that tenure. Public-private partnerships, as mentioned before, that's super important for us. in order for one is delivery across the UK, making sure we can get those delivery partnerships in place. And the other piece is the integrated technology and digital investments. Now, digital investments is much more for the investor side, but the integrated technology is what I want to focus on here. And that's the use of having smart homes, but also looking at how those smart homes translate into a better operation, better well-being, and improving overall the quality of life for residents. And smart home technology is at the forefront of all of our developments. So yeah, how does this translate into what we're doing right now? Well, we've got 3 stakeholders that we look at, which we concentrate on. The first one and the most important is our residents, homeowners and renters, but also our commercial. And we try to create a safe haven for these guys as well, such that residential and commercial can coexist. We look to support local businesses and national businesses, because we're seeing an increase of local business, especially post-COVID, and an influx of new design, new enterprise. And so we want to kind of allow that and encourage our residents to build on top of that. The other point is social enterprises. That falls into our public-private realm. And the third piece is the investors. And our investors are very much more social orientated these days. And they're not just looking for a return on their money, but they're looking at a return on intellect, but a return on society. And so we try and work with all 3 to create this, to deliver our model, but create this really fantastic environment to live and work, play, and that health element too. So how are we doing that? Well, what I want to kind of share with you is our Scottish flagship, which kind of demonstrates this model. And this was a recent article in the Press and Journal up in Aberdeen. So Stonywood Gate is the name of this development. We're actually converting an old office space, which has kind of been on the market for 24, 30 months now. And we're converting that, which has got 0 employment. It's going to transform into over 300 jobs for the local community, in various forms with the co-working side and the other elements. Going to have 50 apartments, a mix of 1 and 2 beds, but under a lot of mixed tenure. And when we're looking at this end-to-end bespoke living, and it's something really exciting, because this is a demonstration of how we expect the future living to be for not just for private residents, but also for affordable and social housing sectors. And bringing people under that one roof and creating that that environment for people to work and live and play is really, really, really important to us. As you can see, this is some of the internals. I think what's really important to know, it goes back to this quality of living, is we don't discriminate between affordable housing and private housing. So we don't create 2 specs. We feel that all residents should get that same entitlement. There is no, all the residents come through the same door. There isn't a second door. This is all the whole piece about removing stigmatisation and bringing people together. These are the options that people have to come in here, into the 1 and 2 bedrooms, create all of the areas and the corridors as an extension of space and places to harmonise, to work. So you get that real fantastic society and communal buzz. We've created specific community areas, ones where where the residents can demonstrate their own skills and subsets, but also they can then socialise on an evening or throughout the week. You then have co-working and the bar and cafe elements all mixed into one place, controlled through access control. Obviously, there's a lot of access control here to ensure the safety of our residents. But it's just a really different environment to be in, one where you have everything in one place. So yeah, this is really where we see the future, and where we also see how social housing can be revolutionised. This is just one model, and as I mentioned before, there's lots of different ways to attack this, but this is the particular way that we want to address this particular issue, and how we hope that this model will really revolutionise the future of social housing for future generations and create this really fantastic place to live. Now, just before I wrap up and go into questions, what I'd like to ask as well is, there's a lot of knowledge. I was just looking through the attendee list as we came in, and there's a lot of knowledge in this particular forum as it speaks. And what we're trying to do right now is write a white paper, or a similar white paper, around the stigmatisation of social housing and how mixed tenure communities can be the saviour of UK housing. And it's going to touch on all of the elements that we talked about today. And what we're looking for is collaboration with private and social enterprises in helping create this paper, with the aim of really going out and looking to drive more change within the UK, within the affordable housing sector. And we're going to be looking at a number of different assets, or facets, should I say: technology, communities, the social engineering on the tag and labelling, and then also the use of mixed tenure or blind tenure as a support mechanism for this. Now, what I'd ask is, if you would like to help us with this and be part of this white paper and supporting in this area, please take a scan of this QR code, get in contact with me, and get in contact with XUSA, and so that we can help work together to really try and move the social housing for future generations to the next level. And we would love to collaborate and work, because collaboration, I feel, is the key to success in all of this. For those who don't know as well, we released a podcast. I released a podcast called Innovators in Affordable Housing. And this heart of this is to bring professionals and social enterprises together for the betterment of affordable housing, looking at all of those unique models and the work that social enterprise and private enterprises do together to really improve this wonderful sector. So if you'd like to be part of this, or you just like to listen to where the different models and what's going on in this sector around the UK and Europe, please feel free to jump on and have a listen on this. So thank you very much. That is the end. What I will do, I know there's plenty of questions. We've got 8 minutes, so I will bring up the chat. There's a lot in here, so what I'll try and do is I'll tackle these, as many as I can, and then if I can't get them, what I'll do is I will provide some answers on Friday and make sure that they're also mentioned. Okay, absolutely agree. For people, of course, you have a problem. We should all want to build homes and places and communities that people want to live in. It's not just actual homes, however, a big part of it, but also the stigma attached, wanting to flee that and your home defining what we are. Yes, problem too. So yes, thanks, Gabby. I think it's a big piece there, that creating places that people want to live and don't feel that stigmatization. No one wants to be marginalized. So yes, good. Hashtag see the person. This is from Liz. Formally identified that investment opportunities can accrue from breaking down stigma. So yes, I agree. I think this is a really important point about mindset, and something I didn't mention, but thank you, Liz. We also need to change the mindset of SMEs and smaller developers, because I work with a lot of developers, collaborate, who still have the opinion that social housing or affordable housing is a detriment, is a negative thing, and will harm their GDVs, it will harm their ability to sell. And I have this constant battle with people that actually no, it can be a positive thing if done right and under the right circumstances. There is no reason why that should bring the value of your product down, why it should not contribute to the success. I feel it's completely the opposite. If you offer a fantastic product under mixed tenure that really hits the drivers of what people want, what the customers want, that is a revolutionary product that everyone wants to be part of. Not just residents, but private social, but then also commercial tenants, that local authorities. And that's a place where people can thrive and live. And I think we need to change that mindset. And from, as you said, Liz, investment opportunities can then accrue from breaking down that stigma, not just at the resident side, but also at the housing developer side. Oluwatosi says, stigma is really ingrained in the fabric of society. My son is in year 11 now, asked me a lot about how people on benefits and what a social housing home looks like. Is it just flats, etc.? Over the lockdown, I've been trying to re-educate him, but there's a job to be done here, as there's conversations to be had in secondary schools. What Alex was talking about is so relevant to have these conversations now, and not just to the housing community, but including schools. Yes, much agreed. and it's an ongoing education piece that has to start from a child onwards. And I think I mentioned in problem 2, if I just come back up into here, it's education opportunities, and that education has got to be all the way through. And you know, it starts in schools, but also with parents, but also developers. You know, we're all responsible for changing that, and we need to get out of our head that affordable or social equals bad, and that's what it boils down to. It shouldn't be that case. And you know, changing the label and creating these different products is just a small step to get there. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Should have said benefit society, fingers, no problems, Liz. Michael says, I think there's stigma within the sector from some colleagues, also needs highlighting and working on. Agreed, yeah, 100%. And you know, I haven't worked in local authorities, local housing authorities, but I know that stigmatisation exists in there. As I already mentioned, developers as well, a lot of them have that stigmatisation which needs to be removed. Oluwatosi says, again, agree with Alex Impey on the home ownership agenda should be downplayed. Thank you. Gabby says, telling, and so, it's very telling and so important. Oluwatosi, it's the ingrained narrative and imagery that allows those in power and the media to feed off division, us versus them, good versus bad. Yes, very much so, us versus them. That's the crux of it is, you know, we've got quite a malignant media in the UK, which kind of likes to create headlines for various financial reasons. But again, comes back to this education piece where we need to prevent that us versus you, where us versus them create just a collaboration. It's all of us together. It's not good versus bad. It's we're working in the common good. And that's where I think communities really play that part, because you build a community, you've got the us as one global we, or the we in that case. And I think that's something that really needs to be built. And then the media need to be able to see that and work with those developers and communities to make sure that everyone can see the benefits that they bring. Liz Roberts, how do we stop houses and owning them being regarded as an asset and come closer to European model? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Liz, but I think you're trying to say that home ownership and move, you're trying to say that the home ownership shouldn't be an asset, or that for people to have, like investors shouldn't consider these as assets. If that's the case, what I say is it comes not just through your Section 75 and Section 106 obligations to continue affordable housing in perpetuity, but I think also there needs to be the education to the developers as well. So for existence with XUSA, we do qualification process, which makes sure that the housing goes to people who need housing. So we don't offer housing to investors. We do not want housing to go to investors for people to use it as an asset, as you mentioned here. We want that to go to people who really need that housing, who want that housing. And so I think there's a legal piece, but there's also a requirement, maybe a moral requirement on developers to push that demand. Unfortunately, I think that will always be difficult when financial comes to play, but as we move to a collaborative society 2.0 or 5.0, with a bigger social conscience, I'd like to hope that we could move that away from investment into more of who needs that. What else have we got in here? I've lived in social housing all my life. The type of tenure, I lived in social housing all my life. The type of tenure I lived in never determined how successful I was to be in. A home is a home, regardless. As housing professionals, we should always enable social mobility holistically. And I agreed 100%. That's the label piece. It doesn't matter, you know, whether you're in social or private housing, you're a human being in the end of the day, and you're on a journey, and everyone should have those same opportunities. And that's what I want to, you know, this is the whole point about here, is remove that stigma, give education opportunities. This is a greater development piece that we're talking about. And you know, I'm super grateful for where social housing got me in my life. And you know, and there's hundreds and thousands and millions of people over the last 100 years who can lay testament to that as well. So exactly, it's about creating those living experiences where people feel safe and enjoy their environment. So it's a really good point. Gabby, Liz says, set to work with HQN on Anglo-Dutch collaborations announced a few weeks ago. One of my main aims is to bring more on that to the UK, working together to make a reality. Social housing, renting a home is not just a need for some, also a choice for some. Tenure of choice. As long as newspapers and governments keep using divisive language narrative, though, it's a very steep challenge. Agreed. We mentioned those points before. Key here is choice, and that's where diverse mixed tenure is key. Let people choose what they want. Don't box people by saying that you should own a home. People don't want that. It's a choice. Giving people choices and a liberation. So yeah, really, really good news. Good points there. So we've reached 11 o'clock, Jethro, and I still see there's a lot of questions here. So unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to get through these. But what I will do is I will make sure to put some replies on here. What I would say is please come, if you have more questions on this, please come and join our stand at XUSA. I'll be there all afternoon and I'll happily answer these questions. Or feel free to get in contact with me. I'm just going to put this QR code up here again. Feel free to contact me on here. My email is on there as well. I'll come into the stand. I will answer these questions. For those that I don't, on Friday, we'll look to answer these questions straight away for you. And on that note, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining me on this topic and look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks very much.